Adams.
Taoiseach, yesterday I raised with you the very serious issues of public interest in relation to the integrity of the planning process and the responsibility of the Minister for the Environment to uphold the integrity of that process. And there are major allegations of planning irregularities in various parts of the state which Minister Phil Hogan is fully aware of, but which he has not dealt with. For example, Taoiseach, the Minister has been made aware of allegations relating to County Wicklow, and they include allegations that An Bord Pleanála upheld objections to a major planning proposal in the county despite the fact that all objections to the development had been withdrawn. And the person who authorised this inexplicable...
Sorry, Deputy. We can't make allegations here. If you have matters of fact, it's a different thing. This is not a court of law here, and we have to be careful. Please do not mention names or locations where you can identify issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheannairí, for that advice. They include allegations that An Bord Pleanála upheld objections to a major planning proposal in the county. Matter of fact, despite all objections to the development having been withdrawn. Matter of fact. The person who authorised this inexplicable decision was appointed Deputy Chairperson of An Bord Pleanála by Minister Hogan, despite very obvious and serious conflict of interest issues.
Can't make allegations. Type in the.
It's a matter of fact.
I mean, you're making an allegation. You're connecting the appointment of somebody to a very important position with an allegation of wrongdoing, and we can't do it in this chamber. The standing orders don't allow it.
Cheannairí, this is a matter of fact.
It's not a matter of fact if it's an allegation. It's not a matter of fact.
Sorry, the allegation is that there might be a conflict of interest. It's a matter of fact that this person was appointed by Minister Hogan and that he cleared these decisions. That's a matter of fact.
But you're implying that there's something improper happening through the appointment of somebody to a very important position who's involved in some wrongdoing. And we can't have that in this chamber.
Well, it is my responsibility,
Of course it's your responsibility, but you don't. There's various ways of doing this, but not in the public domain on an issue of this seriousness.
OK, Cheannairí, I will bear your advice in mind as I put my question to the Taoiseach, which is, did officials in your department, or indeed Minister Hogan's department, question the appointment of the Deputy Chairperson in the light of the possibility of a conflict of interest due to his former position with RPS, which is a private consultancy firm? And yesterday, Taoiseach, you made reference to positions on state boards having to be publicly advertised. Now, could you clarify that for the Dáil? Because are you not aware that the position of Deputy Chairperson of An Bord Pleanála was not advertised? That, I think, begs a response from you. And finally, Taoiseach, do you agree that a situation where the Deputy Chairperson of An Bord Pleanála is overseeing planning applications drawn up by his former employees may represent a conflict of interest? And yesterday I asked you to facilitate the scrutiny by the Dáil of proposed nominees for EU Commissioner, and you refused to answer that question. So it's a very, very reasonable request. As you said famously, Paddy needs to know.
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, Paddy and Patricia, Taoiseach, need to know, and the Dáil does have, I think, a responsibility to scrutinise any of these nominees, and I would ask you to facilitate such a process.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, Deputy Adams, you've come in here this morning now and you make specific allegations against somebody who does a job for an independent, statutory, important element of our democracy, An Bord Pleanála. I don't think I've ever been in contact with Bord Pleanála over the years, other than to inquire when a decision might be made, and that's very, very seldom. So you're making an allegation against somebody who's been appointed to a very important position, and you doubt whether that person is capable of doing their job objectively or not. And you insinuate in here in the chamber this morning that this person is in some way conflicted by the work that they do. I don't think that's very good from your point of view, Deputy Adams. Anybody is entitled to lodge an objection. Anybody is entitled to withdraw an objection. I don't know the details of the case you're talking about, but I am assured that Minister of State John O'Sullivan is dealing with this specific matter, and I'm quite sure if you want to put a question down to her that she will answer that for you. It is a fact that when personnel are appointed to membership of boards, they are entitled to apply under the public advertising website for expressions of interest as to the experience they might bring to a particular position or not. That doesn't confine a minister to choose from those who apply in that fashion. And as I say, ministers can choose membership of boards from outside specific applications that are made. This government is the first to have introduced a requirement and that the chairpersons of state bodies and boards of importance will appear before the relevant Oireachtas committee to explain to the committee and answer their questions in regard to the experience or expertise they might bring to any particular board. And I'm quite sure that if somebody from the House here were to be nominated for consideration to be appointed as a European Commissioner, they would have no problem at all in going before the European Affairs Committee to discuss that matter. So, as I said to you yesterday, if somebody from the House here were to be nominated as a nominee for European Commissioner, there's a requirement that they go before the full European Parliament for a 3 or 4 hour discussion and questioning process about their credentials for the job that they might be nominated by any particular country. That applies in all cases. So I hope that you understand that the allegations you make against an individual whom I don't know are very serious. And let me repeat for you again that Minister of State Sullivan is dealing with this particular case that you mentioned in Wicklow.
Deputy Adams.
Of course I'm aware they're very serious. That's why I raised them, Taoiseach, but they're not serious enough for you. I asked you to clarify whether you were aware of any possible conflict of interest while this was raised, but you didn't answer that. I asked you to clarify your reference yesterday to positions on state boards having to be publicly advertised. You didn't answer that. I asked you, did you know that the position of Deputy Chairperson for this particular on board Planala was not advertised, and you did not answer that. Now, the Mahon Tribunal unveiled the reality of a decade of planning corruption. Your government has not implemented the findings, the recommendations of the Mahon Tribunal, and you cannot portray, as you do here, planning corruption as a Fianna Fáil problem when your government does not act to root it out. And I bring these issues forward here, not to cast aspersions on anyone, because it's part of my public duty as a Teachta Dála to raise these issues in a considered and reasonable and logical way.
Thank you.
Now, the Minister for the Environment acted to close down scrutiny of the planning process when he came in. One of his first acts was to shut down the inquiry initiated by John Gormley. Subsequently, an internal review was set up by the Department of the Environment, which was presented as an alternative to this review, and it claimed there was no wrongdoing. But it had to be set aside when a senior planner, Gerard Conby, provided evidence to the High Court which squashed the reviews section on Donegal and apologised to Mr Conby. Now, you say that you're
Sorry,
sure...
Deputy, you're over time. Would you put your supplement?
I'm just putting my question now, Concordia. You say you're sure Minister John O'Sullivan is dealing with this issue. She announced an independent assessment into these practices over a year ago. I asked you yesterday, will we get sight of that report before the recess?
Thank you.
You said you would get back to me. You didn't get back to me, Taoiseach. Now, can you tell the Dáil, not that you're sure she's dealing with it, but when will this report be published, and can we have sight of it? And I go back to my original question.
Thank you.
Will you facilitate a process in order that we can scrutinise these proposed nominees in this chamber or in a committee?
I'm not aware of a conflict of interest. I hope that answers your question. The answer is no. All the positions on board Planala were publicly advertised. I hope that the answer to that is yes, that's clear. The government will legislate very shortly for a new era, which is the entity charged with the government's shareholding in semi-state companies to advise ministers on appointments to boards on the semi-states. And in order to encourage public participation here, and to have the best talent available. The process of public expressions of interest is available to the public, and many do apply. Obviously, the range of experience they offer is enormous. Ministers don't need to be confined to the applications that are received in that regard. As I said, everybody who's appointed to a chair of a state board has to come before the Oireachtas Committee and do their answer for their experience. And as I said, if somebody from the House is nominated for consideration for appointment to the European Commission, I'm quite sure they would have no difficulty in going before the European Affairs Committee. And an allegation was made to me yesterday, Deputy Adams, about a major waste dump outside Derry, which apparently has generated about a 50 million income. An allegation was made as to where that money went. I said I don't believe it. So maybe, allegations that you make here or that are made to me or anybody else, sometimes are very far removed from the facts and from the truth.
Deputy